The following presentation is our Education Leadership Team Project for Organizational Behavior. This presentation is being presented by Aisha Scott, Aaron Joseph, Catherine Mockler, and Kayla Boyer.
Our purposes and goals for this project are: identify behaviors and competencies adopted by effective leaders, gain insight into the challenge of transitioning from an educator to an educational leader, understand which systems, routines, and procedures are the most effective in maintaining a culture of academic excellence, recognize methods to manage time to best support instruction through teacher development, establish approaches to creating urgency and buy-in and differentiating to meet the needs of all stakeholders. Finally, make connections between varying leadership experiences to determine commonalities.
The first leader we interviewed was Samina Kingsley, who is the high school director of Uplift Peak. She is Teach and Trust Cohort 3 alumni who began her pathway to school leadership as a third grade teacher on a Native American reservation in the Denver inner city. In an attempt to expand her leadership influence, she relocated and accepted a role with the Uplift Network as an instructional coach. With Uplift Peak being one of the schools in her caseload, she grew familiar with the needs of the campus. As the school struggled with principal turnover and teacher retention, she saw the need for stability, so she joined the team as a dean or assistant principal. From there, she discovered the many approaches to school leadership, where she joined the Aspiring Leaders program.
The other school leader was Mrs. Jonica Crowder Lockwood. She is the principal at Hulsey Steam Middle School. As the daughter of a principal, Jonica was always interested in pursuing leadership eventually. After teaching for a few years, and with the encouragement of her school leaders, Jonica began pursuing a career in school leadership. Last year, she was a finalist for Dallas ISD Principal of the Year.
In relation to the first domain, leading with values, here are the similarities and differences that Samina and Jonica communicated in regards to educational equity, reflection and growth, disciplined action, courage and resilience, and entrepreneurial mindset. Please take a moment to review our interview findings. Here are some of the common themes and key points related to leading with values. These findings directly align to our class discussions and readings. Both leaders mentioned needing to have a growth mindset when maximizing employee performance by identifying specific areas of personal growth. Jonica admitted she struggled with leadership development, while Samina identified change management as her growth point. They continuously nurture a growth mindset through consistent reflection and utilizing available social capital to develop new approaches and stay abreast of new trends in education. Because of their strong commitment to leading with values, Samina and Jonica identified biases that were affecting educational equity at their schools. Conversations with their teams around growth mindset and biases were possible through developing trust and managing conflict while motivating the teachers to be all in for scholars. 3 anecdotal statements that really connected leading with values with our future work in leadership were: be like a bamboo, which means be strong and flexible without breaking. Choose your battles wisely. And finally, say what you mean and mean what you say.
In relation to the second domain, lead in transformation, here are the similarities and differences that Samina and Jonica communicated in regards to inspiring others through influence, maximizing performance through team leadership, and creating a new beginning in change management. Please take a moment to review our interview findings. In relation to what we learned in class through discussion and reading, here are some of the common themes and key points. Conflict management is effective through collaborative conversations, which creates buy in. Effective leadership is maximized performance of employees through development and empowerment. Conflict management is creating a common goal and balancing the power structure, avoiding a power vacuum. Motivation is the idea of intrinsic motivation. Social capital is managing teams based on relationships and influence. Performance managing is coaching with the values in mind.
In relation to the third domain, leading shared vision and culture, here are the similarities and differences that Samina and Jonica communicated in regards to mission, vision, and values, clear and consistent expectations, and trust-based communities. Please take a moment to review our interview findings. In relation to what we learned in class, here are some of the common themes and key points identified when interviewing Jonica and Samina. In regards to effective leadership, both expressed a focus on team and interdependency. Both interviewers also discussed how leading a shared vision also requires providing purpose, autonomy, and mastery opportunities to their teachers, which we learned in class that those things increase motivation. In addition, both leaders discussed that managing conflict to build trusting communities comes with leading a shared vision. We heard them both discuss the importance of collaborating with stakeholders rather than taking an avoiding or forcing approach, and we learned about that in our last class. Finally, leading a shared vision often requires addressing bias, which was mentioned in both interviews.
In relation to the fourth domain, leading quality instruction, here are the similarities and differences that Samina and Jonica communicated in regards to foundational instructional planning, instruction and assessment cycle, professional capacity development. Please take a moment to review our interview findings. In relation to what we learned in class, here are some of the common themes and key points identified when interviewing Jonica and Samina in comparison to class discussions and readings. We identified in the interviews that both leaders communicated that it is imperative to maintain a growth mindset and reflect on systems related to instruction in order to implement systems that meet the changing needs of staff and students to help them reach instructional goals. We also found that it was important to both leaders to develop and maintain trusting relationships and consider the needs of teachers to provide them with effective leadership. To supplement these relationships, each leader also implemented a particular protocol with teachers to help them identify gaps in students' learning, all while fostering an academic environment that values academic achievement through reflection, analysis, and intentional planning.
In relation to the last domain, leading strategic schools, here are the similarities and differences that Samina and Jonica communicated in regards to problem solving, performance management, strategic decision making, and talent management. Please take a moment to review our interview findings. In relation to what we learned in class, here are some of the common themes and key points identified when interviewing Jonica and Samina. Leading strategic schools requires performance management. In the interviews, we identified that both leaders were directive at the beginning of the year and then delegating throughout the rest of the year. Both also highlighted empowering the teachers and leaders at their school to have a growth mindset. For example, Jonica said that at her school, she wants every teacher to leave feedback and coaching meetings with dignity. It also requires aspects of effective leadership that we discussed in the first week, including being a facilitative leader and having interdependency over authority. In addition, both interviewees discussed grounding their decisions in their shared values at their school. By doing so, leaders engender commitment rather than compliance in regards to motivation. Samina said it's less about power and compliance and more about learning and growth. Another aspect of our learning that was discussed in both interviews included engaging stakeholders. This is useful when it comes to conflict management and leveraging social capital.
We still have 3 questions for both Samina and Jonica. For Samina, we are wondering, what are the similarities and differences in the evaluation systems for teachers in public versus charter schools? Which evaluation systems do you believe are more effective for talent management? What systems do you have in place to engage parents as partners in learning? How do you leverage these systems to close the achievement gap for your students? And finally, what systems are in place to invest students in their academic achievement? And how do you hold teachers accountable for implementing them? For Jonica, we're wondering, how do you utilize student performance data and teacher evaluation data to proactively plan professional development sessions to meet teachers and students' unique needs? How do you reward students and teachers based on performance to increase investment in student achievement? And finally, how do you integrate SEL strategies to foster a learning environment that supports students' social-emotional areas of growth?
As we reflect on both interviews, some of the common language that we heard from each leader was, new principals can't build Rome in a day and shouldn't try to do everything. Delegate or distribute to rely on others around you. Join a network or find a mentor due to the lack of principal development options. Use protocols consistently when giving feedback. Trust is foundational. Be courageous in establishing clear expectations. Allow everyone a seat at the table and engage stakeholders in the decision-making process. Reflect and maintain a growth mindset. Make people feel valued. Practice and maintain flexibility. And be authentic and share stories that can be effective in inspiring others.
In regards to the interview protocol, we rephrased specific questions to sound more conversational, ask questions that were more specifically oriented to teaching trust competencies, and also provide reasoning and insight about teaching trust to Ms. Crowder Lockwood, who did not go through the Aspiring Leaders program. We also searched for and identified additional questions from the internet to address personal curiosities regarding positions in school leadership and gather detailed answers related to specific competencies. While we expected answers to cover all competencies, most answers fell within the domains of leading with values and leading shared vision and culture.